Yeah, we're good. Okay, we're on.
Oh, okay.
I think there's a delay.
There was a delay.
No, there's a delay in our talking.
Oh, weird.
Oh, right.
I don't like that.
Alright, welcome to the review of A Tale of Two Cities, written by Charles Dickens in 1859 in London.
This book goes over the French Revolution, but it's kind of cool because it doesn't just talk about the actual physical act of revolting. It gives all the background information about why these characters are involved in the revolution and how it affects their lives even after it's already started.
Alright, quick summary. We first meet Jarvis Lorry, who tells Lucy Manette, and another character in the story, that her father, who has been in prison for 18 years, is in fact alive. Fun stuff. Alright, she then goes back to London with her father, where she takes care of him. She meets Charles Darnay, who's on trial for being a spy.
We're outside.
Yeah. She's on where he's on trial for being a spy, and she ends up helping save his life. They get married, meanwhile, and there's some other characters that do some stuff there.
Everybody's in love with Lucy.
Kind of
If there's a
annoying.
character, they love Lucy.
Yes. It's like the show.
Like the show.
Right. Alright, so then Charles Darnay, who we find out is actually the Marquis de Evermonde, he goes back to France when he finds out that Gabelle, his servant, is going to be murdered because of his actions. There he's put in prison, and Dr. Manette ends up saving his life, but then he's imprisoned again, and he's sentenced to death because a letter that Dr. Manette wrote originally. And Sidney Carton, another character who popped up throughout the story, drugs him, takes his place, and is murdered on his account, and everybody else lives happily ever after. The end.
I mean, sort of. Unless you count the Defarges.
Well, yeah, the Defarges aren't all that happy.
The Defarges are kind of the main revolutionaries in the novel, and there's Mr. Defarge, or is it Monsieur Defarge and Madame Defarge, and they have a wine shop, and Madame Defarge is always knitting this thing. Register, and she knits people's names into it, and you find out throughout the book that she is putting the names in it that the revolutionaries need to kill, and she has her different reasons for why they need to be in it. A lot of them are very personal regarding her past as like a child, and in the end she shoots herself in an attempt to shoot someone else, so you know, that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, to say the least.
So there's your summary. A couple things that we thought were important to talk about. Number one, Dickens' character development.
Right. Alright, so in the book, we have a lot of these antithesis, which is his idea of comparing one thing to another. So at the beginning of the book, it starts out with, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Blah, blah. Alright, he continues that. So in these characters, we see Lucy, who's compared directly against Madame Defarge. Lucy's kind of this one-sided character. She's compassionate. She loves everybody. Everybody loves her. She does some good stuff. Pretty much all she is. Yeah. Madame Defarge, on the other hand, she's had a really bad past. Her sister was raped, and her brother was murdered. Oh, look, our dogs are coming out.
Come join us, dogs.
Alright.
Welcome!
Welcome! Alright, all dogs. So, Madame Defarge's sister was raped. Her brother was murdered after trying to revenge her sister being raped, and her father dies of a heart attack, just from sadness from all of this. And then her sister's husband is worked to death by the Marquis when originally he won't allow his wife to sleep with the Marquis. Anyway.
His character development, it kind of takes a lot to really see where he's going with that. Like, in the two examples, Lucy, there's, like, not much to know. Her mom died when she was 2. She thought her dad was dead. He wasn't. She gets married. She has 2 babies. One dies. And that's kind of it. She never really... I mean, she kind of struggles when her husband's in jail, but like her own personal little bubble, like just Lucy, is kind of always the same. Madame Defarge, she has like the whole backstory that you learn about, and it ties everything up. Then you figure out why she wants Darnay to be killed, because Darnay is the Marquis de Evermont's son. And then you figure out that's why she wants Lucy and little Lucy, we'll talk about names in a minute, to be killed, because they're Darnay's wife and child, and she's just kind of like super crazy. So his character development goes from like not a lot, like not very developed, kind of like at face value, to like super like crazy, like mind blowing. I think I liked Sydney's character. Like, he was a nicely developed character.
Sydney is the drunk, he's like worthless, but then meanwhile you find out that he's also really brilliant. He's working for Mr. Stryver, who's a lawyer, but he pretty much does all the work anyway, so it's a little weird in that extent.
It's like Kay Riggle and me.
Exactly. I do all the work, but she's clearly funnier and the better actress, so she's the one that's going to get the credit. Okay.
Just kidding. This is equal, Mrs. Yoder. We're both doing a good job.
Doing awesome. Sidney Carton is compared a lot to Charles Darnay. Charles Darnay, like Lucy, is really, really good. He's supposed to be this great character. He sacrifices for everybody. But his main downfall is that he's really naive and kind of dumb, and you just him because he never does anything of any importance. While Sidney Carton is pretty awesome because he ends up sacrificing himself. He's really devoted to Lucy, and he really seems to love her a lot. So he was pretty cool. Basically, the good characters in the book, which has been criticized a lot by a lot of reviewers, they're all kind of just
kind of forgetful,
vapid. There's nothing much about them. Whereas, I wouldn't say all the villains or the evil characters, but all the contrasts made to them aren't all that are really, really interesting comparatively.
Yeah. Speaking of Sydney and comparisons, Sydney Carton could be considered the Christ figure of the novel, because every good novel has a Christ figure.
Exactly.
So he, kind of like in the Christ figure for, most examples, he kind of struggles at the beginning, and then he figures out what he wants, and he can't have it, and then in the end he sacrifices everything, his own life, for someone else, which is exactly what a Christ figure does.
You can also look at this book, it's not just about the revolution, it's also kind of a Christian allegory for sacrifice, and that's what you see a lot of the characters doing in the book. Darnay sacrifices for the peasants, Carton sacrifices his life for his entire family, Lucy and the rest of them. Dr. Manette sacrifices, he is put in jail for 18 years because he tells people about the Marquises killing people, so that's kind of his sacrifice. And along the way you see the importance of that, whereas the villains in the novel, they don't really seem to make that many sacrifices.
Yeah.
In terms of the Christian's theme, there's also...
They call the guillotine Saint Guillotine sometimes.
They replace their crosses that they're hanging around their neck with, like, little guillotines, which actually sounds much cooler to me. I want to have a guillotine around my neck, which is cool.
Then if you're like, hey, I'm mad at you, boom, finger gone.
Right. During the novel, we see the mender of roads who comes up at one point, and he's now, like, chopping these pieces of wood, and he goes, there goes the mommy, there goes the dad, and there's the little Lucy. And speaking of little Lucy, let's talk a little bit about the names.
Why is she named Little Lucy? Give the kid her own name. Little Jerry, or Young Jerry too.
Yeah.
These poor kids.
Why do you have to name them exactly the same? I don't even want to know what that little boy's name was that died, right? He was probably Charles. His name was Charles Darnay. Charles Darnay, also Charles Evermont.
Yeah.
It's just
and why, okay, what happens when little Lucy has a baby? Is it going to be even littler Lucy? Like, where do you go from there?
Yeah, not cool.
Not cool. I don't like it.
It's weird that he chooses some names to be stupid, like Lucy and Little Lucy, whereas a lot of his other names have a lot of symbolism.
They're representative of things. Yeah.
I was reading Jacques. It was originally used as, like, a name from the aristocrats, and it, like, put down the people, and it was, like, a way of just making them all seem common and all worthless, and then it ended up developing into a name that identified each other as revolutionaries. Lucy means light in Latin.
The symbolic name is Jerry Cruncher, your friendly neighborhood resurrection man. You know, digging up graves since, well, I don't know the year, but he's doing a good job. One kind of, again, with Dickens' development is when Cruncher digs up Clyde's grave and is like, what the heck, he's not in here. So again, it's just so many conclusions can be drawn from the novel, and so much thought has to go into developing it. How many stars would you give it?
I don't know, probably about 3.5. It's a really good novel if you just watch the SparkNotes video, so much better. Makes everything make sense.
And it's a cartoon.
Exactly. Great things. But the problem with actually reading the novel is it's just like really dense. It'll be like, a paragraph is this one sentence. It's a periodic sentence. I got it. See there? Alright? It's a periodic sentence, but it just goes on forever. And you're like, you could have said this in 2 words. You don't need to say it, so.
I think as a literary work, it's very good. I'd give it like 4.5 stars in terms of like Dickens, like writing the words and how they are, and I think it's very, very good. But in terms of being 18 years old and trying to read a book very quickly, it's kind of hard to, I found it kind of hard to keep going and get through. Especially, it's not an easy book to read on an exercise bike.
Yeah,
you
it's
can't
really
do that.
not. No.
You have to like set aside time to read. So I think as reading for like leisure, I'd give it like 2 stars.
Oh yeah.
It's definitely like a literary work. Yeah. I wouldn't call it a chore. I mean, it's well written. It's interesting. But definitely can't multitask.
A lot of thought to get through and be like, oh, who was John Burnside at the beginning? He's also Solomon. But not Solomon Sparks from our school. Don't get confused like I did.
Solomon Sparks!
Not the same thing. But it's just a lot of thought to
really
get
it's
through
kind of, So overall,
3. I think 3, that average,
3,
right?
yeah.
It's went from 2 to 4.
2 to 4, yeah.
Okay, we're gonna go with 3.
We're gonna go 3 stars.
So read this book. Yeah, read this book right here. This one. If your teacher signs it.
The other copy. Call Jane Yoder. She has copies with just like a whole back full of explanations.
Yeah.
That
notes.
we did not get.
We got in the back of this. Let's see.
Extra drawing paper.
It says, ask your bookseller for these Bonton classics. Oh, and also we got a bibliography. Yeah, that was really, really essential to my reading. Didn't look at it. Not once. Yeah.
So anyway.
I think that's about it. I mean, read it if your teacher gives it to you as an assignment. Watch SparkNotes if not. Yep.
Or both.
Yeah, or you could just read SparkNotes and call it your assignment. That's a good way to go, too.
Or you could read it like a good, honest student, and then, the day before you do a book review, watch the SparkNotes video to make sure you got it all.
Yeah.
Because you probably don't.
Yeah. All right. This is the Mary Kate and Kay Riggs movie review. Or
book review.
Book
Movie
review.
book review.
SparkNotes video review. Just kidding. No, we're reviewing. We're clearly
reviewing with special guests Loki, Lucy, and Asher.
And his hedgehog. Don't forget him.
Don't forget the hedgehog.
See you guys later.
Bye!
I just stopped.